Messi! It is the cleanest of clean finishes from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, are top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
Yo, it's a brand new week. Welcome to it. This is ZiFM Sport on a Monday, Manic Monday, the lockdown edition. From our homes to the comfort of your homes, you'll hear from Barry Manandi, Mike Madoda, Mark Pos, Chris, and Alois Bunjira. My name is Shaun Tafrenyika. I'm the producer for ZiFM Sport. I hope you're staying at home and keeping safe. The show on a Monday is always stacked. There's so much to go through. Being a Monday, we've got the Castle World Football Report, so make sure you stay tuned in for that. You can also look forward to a local sports news roundup around the world in 60 and our power play. Remember Kelly Clarkson? We've got a brand new song from her. Now, Saturday was Independence. As we celebrate 40 years of our sovereignty, tonight we discuss Zimbabwe's biggest sports stars since independence. Who do you think are Zimbabwe's biggest sports stars since independence? We've got a phenomenal list of 8 sports stars. Can you guess who they are? Hit us up on social media. The handle is at ZiFM Sport on Facebook and Twitter. So while you mull over that, who's Zimbabwe's biggest sports stars since independence? Let's catch up with the local sports news on the home front from Barry.
The home front. Local sports news and analysis.
Our local sports news roundup starts with cricket news, where as the coronavirus pandemic continues to wreak havoc on the global sporting industry and other aspects of life, Zimbabwe cricket stalwart captain Brendan Taylor has expressed concern over the potentially damaging effect the coronavirus-induced long break could have on the national team's performances. Zimbabwe could turn out to be one of the biggest losers from the COVID-19 pandemic-prompted break, as they were anticipating a rare-packed international calendar this year. The Chevrons kicked off the year with a 2-match test series at home to Sri Lanka before touring Bangladesh for a lone test, 3 one-day internationals and 2 T20s. In football news, Zimbabwe could get another window of opportunity to fix its condemned stadia to meet international standards after FIFA on Saturday confirmed that all national team matches that were scheduled to be played between the 1st and 9th of June have been postponed indefinitely because of the coronavirus outbreak. The country risked playing home matches abroad after the Confederation of African Football in February banned local stadia from hosting senior national men's football competitions as they don't meet required standards. We wrap it up with news from the top tier of domestic football, the Casablanca Premier Soccer League, where former Dynamo striker King Nasama has resurfaced at Premier League new boys Wawa, where he's expected to lead their forward line together with Namo Lamek. Lamek was loaned to Gweru Bay side by FC Platinum after failing to nail down a first-team place. Nasama, though, is seeking a new berth in his career following below-par stints at Chickenin and ZPC Kariba. The young forward showed glimpses of promise during his days at Dynamos in 2017 under the tutelage of Lloyd Samaita Mtasa before his stints at Chickenin and ZPC Kariba. That's your local sport news roundup.
Hi, I'm Warriors coach Zdravko Logarušić and you are listening to ZiFM Sport.
Sports with a difference.
Now, Zimbabwe turned 40 on Saturday. That's 4 decades of rich history. And tonight on ZiFM Sport, we celebrate by looking back and looking at Zimbabwe's sports stars since independence. Phenomenal professional athletes who have flown the flag high and given us memories filled with pride and joy. Let's begin in the 1980s with Pause. there was Warriors goalkeeper Bruce Grobbelaar and Zimbabwe cricketer Dave Houghton. And after that, we'll go to the 1990s, where Mike will talk about Warriors legend Peter Ndlovu and golf legend Nick Price.
It's Zimbabwe's biggest sports star since independence from the 1980s. I'm going to look at two today, and the first is one Bruce David Grobbelaar, born the 6th of October 1957. He is, of course, a former Zimbabwe footballer who played as a goalkeeper, most prominently for the English team at Liverpool between 1981 and 1994, and for the Zimbabwe national team. He is, of course, remembered for his gymnastic-like athletic ability, unflappable confidence, and eccentric and flamboyant style of play. And I think that's where Bruce made it in his career. He was born in South Africa, growing up in Rhodesia, today Zimbabwe, and served in the Rhodesian army before he went off to Canada and started playing for Vancouver Whitecaps in the North American Soccer League. And he gained Liverpool's attention during a loan spell at Crewe Alexander in the late 1980s, and it was there that Bob Paisley, who was manager of Liverpool at the time, looked at this guy, and obviously through the Liverpool scouts thought this guy's got the potential. And suddenly Bruce Grobbelaar was signed and was playing football for probably the biggest club in Europe, Liverpool Football Club. But we also got to remember that Bruce, he obviously went on to be a talented footballer, but this guy was a talented sportsman. He was a very talented cricketer, and he was even offered a baseball scholarship to the United States. But football was the career path that he took, and he also played for Highlanders. But what the whole Bruce Grobbelaar going to Liverpool was that suddenly Liverpool looked and thought, well, the supporters thought, well, we have probably the best goalkeeper in Ray Clements, who was deputy to Peter Shilton for England. Had it not been for Shilton, I think Clements would have been the number one, but that's how it worked out. And suddenly Bob Paisley had looked at this guy from Africa and thought, yeah, I'm going to sign him. I'm going to take a gamble on him. And everybody thought, well, he's going to be second fiddle. There's no way he's going to replace Ray Clements in the Liverpool goal. And suddenly, the departure of Ray Clements to Tottenham Hotspur, Bruce was given his opportunity, and he grabbed it with both hands. Although his first season wasn't the greatest, but one thing with Liverpool, and in those days with Bob Paisley, Joe Fagan, and Keith Saunders, that whole backroom staff, is that they kept faith in players. Unlike today, where one game, two games, and you're out, and you don't perform. Whereas there, he made some blunders. I'll never forget a game against Manchester City. A ball went right under his body that he could have stopped. And I thought, well, this could be the end of Bruce Grobbelaar. But you know what? Bob Paisley stuck with him, and he went on making 628 appearances for Liverpool, 440 in the league. He won the league championship with the club 6 times. He won 3 FA Cups, 3 League Cups, and of course the European Cup in 1983-84. Who will ever forget the spaghetti legs against AS Roma? But closer to home, he played for Zimbabwe in the 1982 World Cup qualifying match versus Cameroon, and he also appeared for Zimbabwe in the qualifying match for the 1986 World Cup versus Egypt. He was part of that team that was under Reinhard Fabisch. He played alongside the likes of Adam and Peter Ndlovu, and he was passionate about playing for Zimbabwe. And I think that's why towards the end of his career, he lost his place at Liverpool, because he was adamant when there was international football that he would travel and he would come home and play for his national side. So he was passionate about his club, but he was passionate about his country as well. And he went on, of course, to end his career, and he still talks about his beloved Zimbabwe, and I'm sure he would love to coach Zimbabwe one day. He would love to coach Liverpool Football Club, but for me, he was a brilliant goalkeeper. His athleticism meant that he hardly missed a game. He was just a likable bloke that you wanted on your team every single week, and for me, he's got to be one of the greatest footballers to come out of our country from the early 1980s. The next one I'm going to talk about is another good friend of mine, and he was actually here recently with the county side Derbyshire, and that is one David Lord Houghton. He was born on the 23rd of June 1957. He is a former national cricketer, former national Zimbabwe coach, currently the head coach of Derby County Cricket Club, who had their pre-season cut short due to the coronavirus pandemic and had to return back to England. But he was another very, very talented sportsman, was David Houghton. He played hockey for Zimbabwe, and incidentally, the Pakistan hockey captain described Dave Houghton as probably one of the best goalkeepers he had ever played against. But Houghton decided that cricket would be his first choice, and he captained Zimbabwe in their first 4 Test matches and led the team in 17 one-day internationals. Obviously, age was against his side because Zimbabwe only got Test status so late in his career, but he still holds the record for the highest Test score by a Zimbabwean with 266 against Sri Lanka in the 94-95 series. He still holds the Test match record for the most runs in a career without a duck. His most memorable one-day international innings, and I'll never forget it, against New Zealand in the 87 Reliance World Cup in which Houghton scored 142 off just 137 deliveries with 13 fours and 6 sixes. And Zimbabwe were on the cusp of winning that game, but unfortunately New Zealand just scraped through by 3 runs. But that was a phenomenal innings, and it just showed the talent of Houghton and what he offered Zimbabwe cricket and what he brought to Zimbabwe cricket, both as a player, as a captain, and then later on as a coach. Incidentally, he's also the fastest Zimbabwean Test cricketer to reach 1,000 Test runs, and along with Ian Butchart, set the record for the highest 8-wicket partnership in ICC Cricket World Cup history, being 117. Another gifted sportsman, a gifted hockey player, a gifted cricketer, and now offering his services as a coach. He's done commentating. He is a phenomenal man, and David Lord Houghton would certainly go down as one of the best sportsmen from Zimbabwe from the 80s.
Z.
Hi, my name is Shaun Williamson, Zimbabwe cricket captain. You're listening to ZiFM Sport.
Z. The 90s, for me, the golden era that bred a golden generation that sprung forth the golden boy we'll call Peter Ndlovu, or as English commentators prefer to call him, Peter Ndlove. Born on the 25th of February 1973 in a family with a rich footballing legacy, Peter is younger brother to Madinda and the late Adam Ndlovu. Educated at Loche Primary School and Muzilikazi High School, Peter Ndlovu grew up in Makokola and turned out for Highlanders, inspiring Boso to their first league title in 1990. In that brief stint, Peter Ndlovu crowned Soccer Star of the Year in back-to-back seasons. 1990, sharing the award with George Nechironga, and then 1991. Hop, skip, and a jump. Where do we find him? We find Peter Ndlovu as the first African to play in the English Premier League on the 19th of August 1992. Peter Ndlovu, the pioneer, paving the way for the likes of Tony Yeboah, Lucas Radebe, and Daniel Amokachi. We'll remember Peter Ndlovu, of course, for his stint at Coventry City. They had top flight status those years, and he was there 1991 to 1997, and he played a significant role in the major teams of Coventry City, which were managed by the likes of Bobby Gould, Ron Atkinson, as well as Gordon Strachan. You'd also have stints in the English Championship, playing for Birmingham City, Huddersfield Town, and Sheffield United. That's 1997 to 2004. Mamelodi Sundowns in South Africa, 2004 to 2008. But what really cements Peter Ndlovu's place as an iconic Zimbabwean sports star is his stint with the Warriors, 1991 to 2007. 100 caps, the most by any player, and 38 goals. We remember him for his goals, his skill, his pace, as well as his commitment. For me, the most iconic game of all has got to be that game versus South Africa. Bafana, the shoe shine piano they were calling themselves, but they came to the giant National Sports Stadium and they played horribly out of tune. Peter Ndlovu with a brace, and who can forget that Cruyff turn that had the entire stadium on their feet as Peter Ndlovu wowed and he dazzled. And of course, Peter Ndlovu would lead Zimbabwe to their maiden dance at AFCON in 2004, as well as the following tournament in 2006. A hugely gifted player, but also a player who will remember for his humility. Certainly one of the icons of Zimbabwean sport and the golden boy of the 90s. But alongside him was Nick Price. Now, Nick Price's full name is actually Nicholas Raymond Liege Price. He was born in Durban, South Africa, and moved to Zimbabwe at the age of 8. Now, that's when he actually took up the sport of golf. At the age of 17, he traveled to the United States of America and he won the Junior World Tournament in San Diego, California. Price then spent the next year, 1975, playing on the South African and European tours as an amateur. At that early age, people already knew that this guy was the real deal. In 1982, Price narrowly missed winning the Open Championship. That's a British Open. He held a 3-stroke lead with 6 holes left to play, but then he faltered and Tom Watson beat him by 1 stroke. Disappointment for him, heartbreak for him, but 1983, he was to go on and join the Professional Golfers Association of America, that's the PGA Tour, full-time, and he showed fantastic bounce ability, winning the World Series of Golf that year by 4 strokes over the legendary Jack Nicklaus. In the years that followed, of course, Price was hailed by his peers as one of the best and most likable golfers on the tour. After winning the World Series, however, he did not capture another PGA Tour event for 8 years. Fast forward 8 years, we are in the 90s, and then Nick Price becomes the best player in the world. 1991, Price wins 2 PGA events, the Byron Nelson Classic and the Canadian Open. The following year, he finished first at the PGA Championship, which began an incredible 24-month run in which he won 16 times and finished in the top 10 in 37 of 59 tournaments. The 15th win came in July 1994 at the Open Championship, where Price avenged his 1982 heartbreak by sinking a spectacular 18-meter putt for an eagle on the second to last hole, a shot that clinched his victory. Then in August at the PGA Championship, he shot an 11 under par 269 to win and become the 7th golfer to capture back-to-back majors. Less than a month later, he would win the Bell Canadian Open. Nick Price ranked number 1 in 1994, the best golfer in the world, dominated some of the most iconic golfers that we know, and he flew the flag of Zimbabwe. And of course, post-career, he's still playing on the seniors tour, but post the professional career, Nick Price, of course, designing golf courses. I think he did the Borodale Brook golf course, and he's also designing golfing apparel. He was inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame in 2003, and he's the current captain of the internationals in the prestigious President's Cup, which pits the USA against the rest of the world. Z.
Oh, so it's actually Bruce Grobbelaar. That's according to Pause coming through with the correct pronunciation. Remember the wobbly leg penalty heroics, and then you go on to make a phenomenal penalty save. I mean, that ability, that flexibility, that bravery that Pause talked about sets him apart. And fun little fact about Bruce Grobbelaar, he became a celebrity contestant on Hell's Kitchen. It's a famous cooking reality show. He's also got a riveting autobiography called Life in the Jungle, where he takes you back to an era where Liverpool ruled football. And like Paul said, he was super passionate about playing for Zimbabwe, certainly one of our great sports stars. And then there was Dave Houghton, or should I say Paul's homie. Now Houghton, he was a natural sportsman and excelled in cricket, hockey, squash and tennis. We'll talk about how he was even Zimbabwe's goalkeeper, hockey goalkeeper that is, at a certain point. And his ability as a hockey goalkeeper, I think that's what stood him apart. I mean, with his very quick reflexes, also very agile, standing at the back, and achieved some brilliant dismissals while standing up at stumps. And have you noticed that players who usually can play hockey well go on to excel in cricket? I used to see it in high school as well. Mike then talked about the golden era, the 90s, where he talked about Captain Fantastic, Peter Ndlovu, or Peter Ndlovu, Suku Zonke. Ndlovu may have not won many honors during his time at Coventry City in the Premier League, but he certainly broke the mold. He was a trailblazer, someone who always flew high the flag for Zimbabwe. And then Nick Price, he's in the Golf Hall of Fame, in the World Golf Hall of Fame. I think that there's nothing more to it there. There's nothing more to say. He's in the Golf Hall of Fame. And if there was ever a golfer who took the road less travel, it was him. He was an intricate puzzle, but when all the pieces finally came in place, Price at his peak played at a level really reached in the history of the game, the history of the world. One of our pioneers of sports here in Zimbabwe. Keep your messages coming in. The handle is at ZiFM Sport on Facebook and Twitter. We are talking about Zimbabwe's biggest stars since independence. Remember, we've got our power play updates from the beautiful game. But coming up next is Around the World in 60.
Around the World in 60 seconds. International sports news.
We kick off in Spain, where Charles Leclerc once again proved his online racing news as he made it back-to-back virtual Grand Prix victories last night, albeit after an epic race-long battle with Formula One rival Alex Albon around the Shanghai circuit. Leclerc and Albon, mainstays at the front of the Formula One grid for Ferrari and Red Bull respectively, were the class acts in a virtual Chinese Grand Prix, which included sporting stars such as Thibaut Courtois and Ian Poulter. We head over to the US, where world number 3 Brooks Koepka is bracing for a weird experience of playing golf tournaments without fans as the PGA Tour eyes a return to competition in June. It's going to be so weird, man, Koepka said on the Pardon My Take Sports podcast on the prospect of playing without galleries because of continuing coronavirus concerns. The energy that the fans bring, that's what we all live for, we all strive for, Koepka said. We touched down in Serbia, where world number 1 Novak Djokovic's position to vaccines could stand in the way of his return to tennis once it resumes from the coronavirus pandemic. A push is growing for all players to be vaccinated when tennis starts again, provided a vaccination is produced by then. Former world number 1 Amelie Mauresmo said last month that tennis should not resume unless players can be vaccinated, although the scientific community has repeatedly said that may be a year away if a vaccine is developed at all.
Hi, this is Alexandra Maseko, and I'm the national basketball team captain, and you're listening to ZiFM Sport.
Let's continue with our discussion on Zimbabwe's biggest sports stars since independence. We've got a phenomenal list of 8 sports stars, and so far we've heard about Bruce Grobbelaar, Dave Houghton, Peter Ndlovu, and Nick Price. Let's now go to the period of 2000 to 2010 with Barry, where we'll hear about Olympic champion minister Kirsty Coventry and warrior striker Benjani. And after that, Chris will finish it off with the period between 2010 and 2020, where we should talk about rugby star Tendai the Beast Mutawarira.
The decade at the start of this millennium can rightly be assigned to 2 phenomenal Zimbabwean gems that have held the national flag aloft on the international stage, and in so doing indelibly written their names in international sporting folklore. From the year 2000 to 2010, the names of Kirsty Coventry and Benjani Mwariwari have brought pride to the nation immeasurably. It was at the Olympic Games in Sydney in the year 2000. Zimbabwe's interest in the Games was to be piqued by the performance of a 17-year-old Dominican convent student who had qualified for the semi-finals in the swimming. Not since the so-called Golden Girls in hockey in the 1980 Olympics had the country been allowed to dream of qualifying for an Olympic final, let alone winning a medal at the Quadrennial Games. The dream wasn't to be, as she wasn't able to make it past the semis and bowed out. The country, though, stood up and took notice of this prodigy. An entire nation realized that she was something special. So much so that she was awarded the Sportswoman of the Year award for the year 2000 at the annual National Sports Awards, The Answers. She had arrived. Her name? Kirsty Lee Coventry. And what a way to begin the millennium for her. and the country as a whole. It was clear that she was set to dominate the sport, certainly locally, but would she be able to achieve the potential that everyone so plainly saw in her on the international stage? In the next 16 years, she was set to answer that question with a resounding and vociferous yes. Born in Harare on the 16th of September 1983, her parents teaching her how to swim, it is said that one day she told her parents she would go to the Olympic Games and win gold. She was 9 years old back then, but little did anyone know she was good for that promise and commitment. At the age of 12, Kirsty's parents took the family out to Beira in Mozambique on a vacation, and they had camped on the beach until a sandstorm blew out of nowhere, forcing them to sleep in the car. Kirsty recalls on the same trip, they had to be rescued one day after they swam out to the dolphins because the current swept them a long way out. Ever the adventurer, ever the groundbreaker. Kirsty moved to the United States on a scholarship in Auburn University after high school and was part of the Auburn Tigers swimming and diving team that won the National Collegiate Athletic Association NCAA championships in 2003 and 2004. At the 2004 Athens Olympics, Kirsty won her first gold medal in the 200 meters backstroke, a silver medal in the 100 meters backstroke, and a bronze in the 200 meter medley. Kirsty proved that her Olympic feat was no fluke by bagging 2 gold and 2 silver medals at the 2005 World Aquatic Championships, the 9th FINA World Championships in Montreal, Canada. For her feat, she was named Female Swimmer of the Meet. It was on the 16th of February in 2008 that the US Grand Prix in Columbia, Missouri, where Kirsty Coventry clocked 2 minutes, 6.39 seconds to set a new world record in the 200 meters backstroke, her favorite event, eclipsing the time set by Hungarian Kristina Egezegi in 1991, which was the second oldest record in swimming. At the Beijing Olympics, 6 months later, Kirsty defended her 200 meters backstroke, winning in 2 minutes, 5.24 seconds to reclaim the world record after Margaret Holzer had broken Kirsty's mark at the US Olympic trials in July. Earlier at the Olympics, Kirsty Coventry picked 3 silver medals in the 200 meter individual medley, 400 meter individual medley, and 100 meters backstroke. Her first was the 400 meter individual medley, where she became the second woman to swim under 4 minutes and 30 seconds behind the champion Stephanie Rice, as both swimmers beat the previous world record. Kirsty picked up a second silver in the 100 meters backstroke, despite setting a world record earlier in the semi-finals. Upon her return from Beijing, President Robert Mugabe called her a golden girl and awarded her $100,000 reward, of which she gave a substantial part to charity. 4 months to the London Olympic Games in 2012, Kirsty suffered a knee injury and was down with pneumonia 2 months later. Her preparation was greatly affected, and although she made the finals of her events, she did not win any medal at these games. Her 5th and final Olympic appearance came in the 2016 Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where she repeated her 6th place performance in the 200 meter backstroke from 2012 with a time of 2 minutes 8.8 seconds. She also finished 11th in the 100 meter backstroke. She retired soon after the Rio Games. She competed at 5 Olympics from the year 2000 to 2016. Coventry has also won all but one of Zimbabwe's Olympic medals, that one of course belonging to the Golden Girls of hockey. On the 7th of September 2018, 9 days shy of her 35th birthday, she was appointed Minister of Youth, Sport, Art and Recreation in Zimbabwe's cabinet by President Emerson Mnangagwa. She's married to Tyrone Seward, and in May 2019, the couple celebrated the birth of their first child, a true sporting legend. In front of a little more than 15,000 fans at the National Sports Stadium in Harare strutted out a star-studded, high-quality band of Nigerian under-23s to do battle against Zimbabwe's young warriors in a 2000 Sydney Olympics qualifier. Zimbabwe's under-23 side, a richly gifted group in their own right, were led by skipper and Highlanders defender Thulani Via Ncube, boasting the prodigious talents of Joe Lupatla on the wing, Ngobizita Ncube, Desmond Gaza Maringwa, Walter Chuma, the Castle Premier Soccer League Soccer Star of the Year at the time, and Richard Choruma, the Dabuka Express. These names may mean little to the modern-day fan, but if you know, you know. These were the stellar names of the time, and this team ranks as probably the second best Young Warriors team of all time, second only to the 1995 All-Africa Games team, the Bunjira one. But on that day, the 1st of November 1999, it wasn't any of the names I've mentioned that stole the show as expected. Instead, it was the second half performance by the arrowhead of Coach Clemens Westerhof's attack, a wiry, slim, tall striker named Benjani Mwaruwari, whose tireless running made life very difficult for the Super Eaglets defense and resulted in him scoring 2 goals in the 2-0 victory over their more illustrious opponents and take significant steps towards qualifying for the Sydney Olympics. They would go on to lose 4-0 in Nigeria and miss out on qualification, but Benjani, by way of his performances, had arrived in the psyche of every local football fan. Playing for Air Zimbabwe Jets in the local Premier Soccer League as he was then, the striker was to go on and move to South Africa and link up with his mentor Jomo Sono at Jomo Cosmos in the South African Premier Soccer League, going on to win the Player of the Season and Players Player of the Year in 2001. That same year, Benjani moved to Swiss club Grasshoppers on loan, and the following year, Guy Roux took him to Auxerre in France. Benjani had a good run at the start, capitalizing from Djibril Cisse's absence, becoming the top goal scorer in Ligue 1. Roux never played the two together, and eventually Benjani found himself surplus to requirements under Roux's successor Jacques Santini, this time forced out of the 4-5-1 formation by Luigi Pieroni. While at Auxerre, Benjani scored the opening goal in the 2005 Coupe de France final as they defeated Paris Saint-Germain. He also played a substitute in the final as they won the tournament 2 years earlier in 2003. On the 5th of January 2006, English Premier League club Portsmouth signed him from Auxerre for £4.1 million after Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger recommended the player to Pompey manager Harry Redknapp. Benjani became the third Zimbabwean to play in the English Premier League after Peter Ndlovu, who featured for Coventry City, Sheffield United and other teams, and Bruce Grobbelaar, of course, who was the Liverpool number 1 for many, many years. At Portsmouth, he didn't score in his first 14 games for the club, but became a crowd favourite because of his high work rate and assists for other players. After all, he was playing alongside the likes of Nwankwo Kanu, Glenn Johnson, Lomano Lualua and Aliou Cisse, who incidentally is the current Senegal head coach. Benjani finally got his first goal for Pompey against Wigan Athletic on the 29th of April 2006 in a 2-1 victory, which saw Portsmouth avoid relegation from the Premier League, an important goal. Absolutely. From there, he never looked back, getting the goals that would make the Pompey fans create a song that would celebrate his size, ability and nationality, as every so often the song Benjani Oh would reverberate around the stadiums in England. So much so that his goal-scoring exploits in 2007-2008 season cemented Manchester City manager Sven-Goran Eriksson's interest in him. And on the 31st of January, the last day, transfer deadline day of 2008, he had a bid for around £8 million accepted for him to move to the City of Manchester Stadium. Being deadline day of the transfer window, it was always going to be squeaky bum time. It was doubly so when he missed 2 successive planes to Manchester, supposedly due to his reluctance to leave Portsmouth, meaning he did not arrive at the club's training ground until 11:10 in the evening, leaving insufficient time to complete the move before the midnight deadline. A transfer was completed for Benjani to move to Manchester City on the 5th of February 2008 for a fee of £3.87 million on a 2.5-year deal. Further payments could be made if he made up to 75 senior starts, which would raise the fee to a total of £7.6 million. His wage was reported at £50,000 a week. Not bad for a boy who started at Lulu Rovers, stomping around at Fupajena Stadium in Chegutu in Zimbabwe's Division 1. His debut for the Sky Blues would come on the 10th of February 2008 against rivals Manchester United in a Manchester derby. A daunting start, but not for the Undertaker. He scored the second goal in a 2-1 win for City from a header and buried the Red Devils. It was a win that would be emblematic of the changing of the guard that was on its way to Manchester. Following the arrival of the big bucks, it became increasingly obvious that he wouldn't be in the Manchester City plans going forward. So in 2010, a season's move to Sunderland and a subsequent stint at Blackburn Rovers, along with a return to Portsmouth for the last hurrah, were a signal of the winding down of a truly stellar Zimbabwean career. In February 2013, it was announced that Benjani had joined Chippa United on a deal until the end of that season, making his debut against Kaizer Chiefs. His club career coming to an end in a country where we can rightly say it all started to take off. For Zimbabwe, Benjani was a truly legendary captain, especially after taking over the armband from former Coventry, Birmingham City, Sheffield United and Huddersfield striker Peter Ndlovu when he retired from international football after the 2006 Cup of Nations. But for the Undertaker was certainly equal to the task, albeit that on many occasions the team did not manage to achieve the heights that its ability promised. So he was only able to play in one edition of the Africa Cup of Nations, and that was in 2006, retiring from international football in 2010 following a disappointing 0-0 draw with Cape Verde. His testimonial in 2012 at the National Sports Stadium was a veritable who's who of African football, attracting the likes of Nwankwo Kanu of Nigeria and El Hadji Diouf of Senegal. Simply a testament to the stature of the man they came to celebrate. A true Zimbabwean and African footballing legend, Benjani, the Undertaker, Marwari.
Z.
Hi, my name's Ryan Cairns, Sunshine Tour professional golfer, and you're listening to ZiFM Sport.
Ndai the Beast Mtawarira. It's a name we grew up hearing first in schoolboy rugby, then in Super Rugby, and then representing the Springboks of South Africa. He's one of the most iconic rugby players of our time, sitting right up there with the likes of Rugby Hall of Famers Richard and Kennedy Tsimba. In his early years, he attended Prospect Primary School in Waterfalls, Harare, and then he attended Churchill High School for 5 years before moving to Peterhouse Boys for the final year of high school on a full scholarship. It's important, this is really important because Churchill High School molded a lot of what the Beast then went on to become, but they don't get nearly enough credit. He was also invited to join the Cats and Dogs Rugby Academy by coach Joey Mwadzuli, and they won the National Senior Sevens tournament that year. In that team, also some familiar rugby names: Danny Hondo, Pete Benedet, Tondere Chavanga. Soon after this, he moved to South Africa and he left with just a suitcase and actually started his training on a donated bicycle, some really humble beginnings. But in 2007, he debuted for the Sharks, and it was clear from the onset that he had a great deal of potential. That combination of size, strength, and speed made him stand out. Now, he had to make a switch though. He had been playing a loose forward in schoolboy rugby, but he was moved to a prop in the Sharks Academy, which he did say was a challenge for him. Some struggles that he had to overcome: he had a heart murmur, which he doesn't talk about much, but he did have a heart murmur and he had to receive specialist treatment for this and sit out of rugby for 2 months. Another one that we probably know a bit more about, under the IRB rules, the Beast was eligible to play for South Africa, but in 2010, chair of the sports committee in the National Assembly in South Africa publicly threatened the South African Rugby Union with illegally fielding Tawarira and threatened to have him deported. Later that year, the Minister of Home Affairs at the time, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, granted his request for a South African citizenship. Tawarira himself also said in an interview that Archbishop Desmond Tutu also assisted him in acquiring the citizenship. Now, playing for the Springboks, he debuted in 2008 against Wales, and he started off with limited game time, but his impact became more and more apparent each time he was given an opportunity, and he went on to be part of the starting lineup for the subsequent Tri-Nations test. In June 2018, he played his 100th test match against England, but missed the Springbok tour to Europe due to a neck injury. 2019, he was named in the squad that went on to win the Rugby World Cup after defeating England in the final. His career yielded 117 caps, the most capped prop in Springbok history. In November 2019, he retired from international rugby, an announcement that was met with a great deal of sadness from his fans right across the world. But he did move to the US straight after this to a Washington-based team in Major League Rugby, Old Glory DC. Those stats of his, absolutely incredible. 117 test caps, 160 Vodacom Super Rugby caps, 3 Tri-Nations, 1 Castle Lager Rugby Championship, 1 Tri-Nations Cup, and 1 British and Irish Lions. I think the best thing about the beast is he hasn't forgotten where he came from and what molded him into the player that he is. He plows back into Zimbabwe consistently, and he has a foundation that's aimed at introducing rugby to the rural areas of Zimbabwe. He also hopes to start an academy, state-of-the-art facility where youngsters can be trained. And he also wants to expand this vision for Zimbabwe and looks at mentoring young Zimbabweans, which he says is really important in order for them to get into a professional setup. Wherever he goes, the Beast will always be one of the greatest Zimbabwean sportsmen and an inspiration always for generations to come.
Kirsty Coventry was a phenomenal athlete, like we heard from Barry. In fact, let's do the checklist. Phenomenal athlete, check. Olympic and world champion, check. National hero, check. Proud Zimbabwean, check. Sports minister, check. What hasn't she done? And we are still continuing to witness her story. And a little fun video she did recently over the weekend. If you go on her Twitter page, she did the Don't Rush Challenge. So make sure you go check that video out. You thank me later. And how about Benjani? Do you know how dope you have to be to have one name? I mean, just be known mainly by one name, Benjani. And one looping memory that stands out for me is that thunderbolt he struck that hit the crossbar when he was still playing for AGXA, that game against Arsenal. And it almost seemed like he broke David Seaman's. I promise you that looping memory replays in my head every single time somebody mentions Benjani, and certainly went on to be a phenomenal player. And how about Tendai the Beast in Tawarira, the man who went to my former school, Churchill. Although, Peter House can take some credit. He also went there too. But he was a bulldog, and he's a World Cup champion. And he's also got a riveting memoir titled The Beast. You might want to pick that up. It's a really, really good read. Those 8 phenomenal sports stars show what Zimbabwe is capable of. They have broken barriers and they have been phenomenal athletes. And I hope that we continue to produce more, because the future certainly has to be bright. Let's take a bit of a breather now with our power play.
Hi, this is Mike Madoda, and you can catch me and the team for all the latest breaking news out of the world of sport, local as well as international, on your favorite station, my station, your station, ZFM. We are Z-Team on ZFM Sport.
You're tuned into ZFM Stereo, my station, your station. This is the lockdown edition of ZFM Sport. Let's keep the interaction going. The handle is at ZFM Sport on Facebook and Twitter. Let's now catch up with what's happening in the world of football in the Castle World Football Report.
Alcohol may be hazardous to health if consumed to excess. The operation of machinery or driving after the consumption of alcohol is not advisable. Not for sale to persons under the age of 18 years.
Castle Lager is more than just beer. It's pure liquid gold, crafted from the finest local ingredients to deliver a taste that is somewhat dry, somewhat bitter, but never sweet. It's the taste that stood the test of time. It all comes together with a Castle.
The Castle Lager Premier Soccer League Report on ZFM Sport. Drum. The roaring fans. Take a ride on the wild side with the Africa Report on ZFM Sport.
In South Africa, former Kaizer Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns player Thuso Pala has not retired from football and will be seeking a new club in the coming months, it has been confirmed. The former Black Leopards winger was released from the club earlier this month, which led to his mother, prominent football administrator Susan Pala, to suggest that the player had retired. But the 33-year-old, one of the standout players in the Premier Soccer League in the last decade, will keep playing, his agent told various sports media. Yeah, I know Pala. I know from my days at Wits University when I was playing there. He emerged from Silver Stars as a very, very promising youngster, very quick, an eye for goal, and very sharp. But I don't think, to be honest, in my honest opinion, I think that he didn't live up to his potential. He promised to give us a lot, but I don't think he did. He did manage to do what his potential required him to do. He moved from Silver Stars and he joined Kaizer Chiefs. Then he went back to Platinum Stars. Then joined SuperSport United, and he also briefly played for Mamelodi Sundowns. I think that at SuperSport, that's when he was at his peak, and I thought that at that time he was going to fulfill his potential, because he also was called to the national team, played in the AFCON, scored against Algeria in South Africa's 3-1 win against Algeria, and I thought he had arrived. But then after that, I don't know what happened. His career just started going downhill. Then he ended up at Black Leopards. Once you play for Mamelodi Sundowns, you play for Kaizer Chiefs, and you end up playing for a team like Black Leopards, you might join a first division club, go on to play for maybe another 2, 3, 4 years and all that. But like I said, I don't see him making it big again in South African football.
Z. All the rivalry.
Here is Harry Kane for Tottenham. Oh, what a goal! A classic derby goal from Harry Kane. Catch him if you can.
All the stars.
Oh, back heels Liverpool 2 in front. Talk about impudence. Talk about improvisation. Talk about Sadio Mane.
And all the game-changing moments.
And Raheem Sterling rattles it home. And once more, City are in front in a trice.
All the updates from the Premier League on ZiFM Sport.
To the Premier League, where there is unlikely to be any relegation from the Premier League if the season ends with no more play possible because of the coronavirus outbreak. Brighton and Hove Albion owner Tony Bloom has told British media. Premier League clubs met on Friday to discuss possible models for finishing the season, but all options remained hypothetical after the UK government extended lockdown restrictions for another 3 weeks.
Z. The league that makes football oh so beautiful, where artistry and strokes of genius are the order of any day, where the game is played with a smile and the little master creates his magic. All the news from the Spanish La Liga on ZiFM Sport.
In La Liga news now, Real Madrid are in pole position to sign Erling Haaland, with fellow Norwegian Martin Odegaard helping to convince him to move to the Bernabeu, according to reports in Spain. Haaland is the world's most in-demand striker thanks to his sublime form at Borussia Dortmund before the season was halted by the coronavirus outbreak. Real are desperately on the hunt for a new centre-forward, with Karim Benzema entering the final few years of his career and Luka Jovic struggling to find form since arriving from Frankfurt. Now, according to AS, on Friday, Real are leading the chase to sign Haaland if they wish to make their move this summer. They claim that Dortmund chief executive Hans-Joachim Watzke is close to Florentino Perez, and that Haaland's agent Mino Raiola is desperate to move his client into the Real squad. Now, that's some of the problem, isn't it? I mean, Erling Haaland has just arrived at Borussia Dortmund, but you've got an agent, Mino Raiola, who wants to move him on again. Why? Simply because he makes money from every move that the player makes. So, in truth, I would believe that at 19 years old, Haaland can easily stay on at Borussia Dortmund, and Borussia Dortmund themselves, they'll be ill-advised to sell him on, especially given that he's just signed for them and is doing a job. I think if Borussia Dortmund wants to kick on, if they want to compete for the championship, which they've been doing in the last 2 seasons in Germany, and continue to do that and finally kick on and win it, they need to keep their best talent, and Erling Haaland clearly is one of their best talents. And it's believed that Odegaard, Haaland's international teammate, who's on loan at Real Sociedad from Madrid, has led a charm offensive off the pitch to convince his compatriot to move to the Bernabeu. But there are some concerns from Real about the making of such an expensive move happen during the financial uncertainty that has been prompted by, of course, the loss of revenue due to the coronavirus pandemic. So Real Madrid themselves may not want to spend as much as they would need to get Erling Haaland across, although in today's prices they say that he would cost about £63 million from Borussia Dortmund next summer. And for me, that's an absolute snip for a striker who is bang on form and a striker who looks like he's going to actually kick on. At 19, he's already one of the leading strikers in the world, and you've got to think to yourself that he can only get better. So good move for Madrid. For me, not the right move for Borussia Dortmund. This is money that they don't necessarily need, money they can do without, but they need to do with the goals of Erling Haaland. So for me, Borussia Dortmund definitely needs to hold on to this player. Real Madrid needs to try their best to get him to the Bernabeu, because albeit that Karim Benzema did a fantastic job this season, or is doing a fantastic job this season, now filling the void of getting important goals, I think the Bernabeu is sorely in need of a refresh, and that refresh could start with the signing of Erling Haaland.
Z. Horsepower unmatched. Torque to beat the best. Speed unrivaled. Sleek and easy on the eye. Let's get behind the wheel of football engineered to perfection. The Bundesliga, made in Germany.
Die Mannschaft goalkeeper Manuel Neuer is irritated that details from his contract negotiations with Bayern Munich appear to be getting leaked. The Germany international has a deal with Bayern Munich running until June 2021, but has grown frustrated with ongoing talks over a potential extension. Schalke 04 goalkeeper Alexander Nobel will arrive on a free transfer ahead of next season, leading to suggestions the Bavarian Giants are preparing to phase Neuer out. Now, it was reported this week that Neuer was demanding a new 5-year contract, which is worth about 20 million euro per year. But of course, he himself has scoffed at those suggestions that have come out of the media. However, the fact that any information is actually being leaked into the public domain is grave concern for him. He'd love to maintain his relationship with the fans who hold him in high esteem, not just as goalkeeper for Bayern Munich, but also the number one for Germany. Now, this is a common, or should I say, a conversation which is not surprising at all. Whenever legendary players reach this stage of their careers, whenever they enter their twilight, there are always big debates that fans and the media, including their employers, are going to have. Should the player carry on playing? Should the player pave the way for a younger player? Should the player then be phased out gradually? And we have seen the same conversation happen around the likes of Peter Schmeichel when he was in his pomp, Edwin van der Sar when he was in his pomp, Fabian Barthez when he was in his pomp, the likes of Gianluigi Buffon, as well as Gianluca Pagliuca, Angelo Peruzzi, all the good goalkeepers have had this sort of conversation. And when I take a look at Manuel Neuer, I've got to say, ever since that injury that he suffered about 30 months ago, I've got to say he's never been the same goalkeeper. There's no doubting his pedigree and there's no doubting his ability, but a combination of that injury, the long time it took for him to recover, and his age now means that he is not one of the best goalkeepers in the world anymore. There are a number of goalkeepers that you can look who are ahead of him in the pecking order. And even for Germany right now, I think for the last 2 years, he's had no right to wear the number one jumper ahead of Ter Stegen of Barcelona, who's been one of the standout goalkeepers in world football, if not the best. So for me, Bayern Munich will be reluctant to pay him so much money to carry on as number one. If they're having ideas around getting in a younger goalkeeper who they can blood into the system, then still it doesn't make sense to pay Manuel Neuer that sort of money. So for me, I think they're better off perhaps selling Manuel Neuer, moving him on to another club in the Bundesliga or abroad. There'll be no shortage of takers there. But I think Manuel Neuer's time is done as a top goalkeeper who can demand what he wants and gets it at whatever club he's playing for. And Bayern Munich is the leading club in Germany. They are the number one brand in the Bundesliga, and they want a top goalkeeper in their ranks. There have been talks that they've been sniffing around Ter Stegen to bring him from Barcelona, of course, with the promise that you come to Bayern Munich, you become number one here at Bayern Munich, you inevitably become Germany's number one. So this is a story to watch and one to keep an eye out for.
The Nerazzurri, the Black and Blues, Inter Milan.
It's Romelu Lukaku, and it was never in doubt. He's a beast at the best of times, but this season he has become a monster.
The Giallorossi, the Yellow and Reds, AS Roma.
Belotti has a go! Tremendous hits! That's what he's capable of.
La Viola, the Purple Ones, Fiorentina.
Brock Ribery seals a glorious win for Fiorentina with a sumptuous goal at San Siro.
The Bianconeri, the Black and Whites, Juventus.
Ronaldo seals yet another 3 points for Juventus.
Tough yet colourful. The best of Italian football on Z.
Roma Chief Executive Guido Fienga has praised his players' superb gesture after they volunteered to forego 4 months' salary to help the club during the coronavirus pandemic. The players, manager Paulo Fonseca and his staff will also pay the difference to ensure all club staff placed on furlough receive their full salary.
Manic Monday indeed, absolutely stacked. And just like that, we've run out of time. We have to go. We'll catch you tomorrow. Until then, take care of yourself and stay safe.